Welcome to my shop. My name is Rachel Gingell. Today I'm doing a replacement on this Ford 3000 clutch. This is a Ford 3000, but the techniques that I show will apply to a 2000, 3000, 4000, or 5000 series tractors with a dual stage clutch. That means that the tractor has live or independent PTO. If you have a tractor with a single stage clutch, meaning no live PTO, I have a separate tutorial. The techniques on that tractor are a little bit different, so if you have that tractor, you'll want to click over and watch a different video. But if you have a two-stage clutch, then you'll definitely want to follow along. You can see that I just pulled the two halves of my tractor apart. It's a little bit of work to prepare for that split, and there's a few things you might get hung up on. First, I want to point out to you that my manifold and carburetor are all intact on the front half of the tractor. I also chose to leave my antifreeze in the tractor. I don't see a reason to drain it. My wiring harness and voltage regulator, I just pushed back onto the front half of the tractor. You can see that I unplugged it right here underneath the dash. For ease, I chose to leave this bracket here and keep the gas tank intact. There are 4 bolts right here that you'll access from the back side that hold this onto the block of the engine here. If you pull those 4 bolts out on the back side, that allows you to leave the bracket in here, and then your gas tank can stay intact. That just saves you some time and some steps. The bolts around here should all come out fairly easily for you, except for this one on the top. There's lines behind there that prevent it from coming out all the way, but it will allow you to pull it out enough to clear the split. So you can just pull it out and then leave it resting here like I have mine. You don't take it completely off of the tractor like the rest of them. My throttle linkage here is just loosened up. For the steering, this tractor does have power steering, so it's a little bit more difficult to take apart. It's got that extra cylinder here for the power steering. You can see that I just detached mine here. I took my 2 bolts out, and then those arms will separate and pull apart. The radius arm I did choose to take off, however, that isn't essential. I took it off more so that you could easily see the clutch. If you want to leave your radius arm on, you probably could. In fact, it might actually help you steer the tractor apart as you go. I have my cherry picker hooked up here. I have a jack underneath here, and then the rear end of my tractor is very secure as well. Take the time when you hook up your cherry picker to really think through if this is going to hold or not. You don't want to have an accident while you're splitting the tractor, but if you're smart about it and you take your time, think about how you're going to do it, you should be able to split your tractor just fine. It is something that you should probably have help with. It's kind of heavy. My dad and I did that together, and he's going to help me with the flywheel and such too, because some of these parts are a little heavy and go a lot easier if you have someone to help you out. In an effort to keep dust down, I'm going to spray this brake cleaner all over the pressure plate here and inside there. I'm wearing gloves and safety glasses while using this because the overspray, I don't want to get in my eyes. I'm going to spray that down. I got the pan underneath it. This will just help cut down on any dust that's on there. I'm taking the last bolts out of my pressure plate. I got one more up here. I think that's going to be the last one. One down there too. Okay, with the pressure plate off, we will be able to see the clutch disc. First, I want to talk about the pressure plate though. Notice that it's worn right here. This is where the throwout bearing is on the clutch. Also, this finger right here is broken. It should look like this. Instead, it's broken right here. So that is why this clutch was giving us the trouble that it was. This wear here is likely due to an improper adjustment when this clutch was installed. So adjustment is really important. With that, we're going to take the...
When this tractor came in, what it was doing was grabbing. It would take off and grab, and the reason that it was grabbing is because this finger was still staying engaged, and this caused the PTO not to engage easily. So that was the problem. So we've kind of noticed what the problem is already.
Yeah. Then behind that, we're going to see what disc is inside there. Ooh, we have a button clutch or a 3-pad clutch. I've heard it called either of those or more commonly just a triangle clutch.
And
Disc
it's got
there.
a lot of wear. Look at how close it is to the rivets.
Good.
Also, when you talk about these flywheels, we're going to take this to an automotive shop and have it resurfaced. When they do that, they're used to just surfacing that surface. On these two-stage clutches, they have to take the surface off here, say it's, I'm going to give you a number, like 20 thousandths. They have to take 20 off of this surface here so that it lines back up. So it's very important when you take this to get it resurfaced, whatever the distance is they cut off here, they also cut off this here, or it won't release when you put it back together.
Notice how I have an eye bolt through my flywheel and then hooked up to the cherry picker. That is going to help us take this off with ease and not have concern of dropping it since it's so much heavier than the other parts. I have 2 more bolts here that hold the flywheel on, which I'm going to remove. And then with that, all my bolts will be loose. Let me just make sure that these are going to pull out. Oops, I thought I had them all the way. Let me pull those out with an impact wrench. I did go ahead and spray this down a second time because once I took that pressure plate off and the clutch disc off, there was still more dust in there, so I sprayed it a second time, which you may need to do as well. With that, now we are ready to pry that off. So we're just using pry bars here to kind of pull it equally, and then it's loose, and then my dad's just gonna let it down gently with the jack that's on the cherry picker.
When Rachel and I got this down on the floor, we looked at it. It is really grooved deeply. It's probably more than a 1/16 of an inch grooved into the surface. So this one definitely has to be remachined. The clutch, on these button clutches, you only have 3 little pads. So it puts a lot of pressure on the pads themselves. Therefore, it has to be a real flat surface for the little surface to grab. So it's really important with this one that we send it out and have it remachined. Yours might be the same way. The ring gear on this one, I've looked at it, we rolled it around here, and it's really nice. There's no teeth missing, there's no wear, so we're not going to replace it. But if yours is worn, when you order the clutch, that's the time to order the new ring gear and sweat it on there and get it on there. The machine shop, they don't care if it's on or off, it doesn't matter. They put it on a table, and it's magnetized down to a table, and it just spins, and they resurface it. So that doesn't matter when it goes to the machine shop, but now's the time to look at that.
All of the clutches in front of me would be suitable for a Ford 3000 tractor, but only one of them is going to be the correct clutch choice for your tractor. That point rings true for any of those 2000, 3000, 4000, or 5000 series tractors. There are so many different clutches that could be in your tractor. Now, there is a way to tell from a code outside of your tractor which clutch it would have, but I'm not going to tell it to you because parts are swapped out on these tractors all the time. They were made in the 70s, and a lot can change between now and then, so those numbers are no longer as reliable as they once were. Instead, I'm going to ask you to split your tractor, take a look at the clutch that's inside your tractor, and then choose the clutch kit that is appropriate for you. In front of me, I have 3 clutches here that are dual stage clutches that you can see that there's 2 sets of springs. This is for when you are driving your tractor, you put your clutch down halfway, it stops 1 disc, and then when you put your clutch down the rest of the way, it stops the second disc or second rotation. All 3 of these pressure plates are the same. They are 29 spline pressure plates. I'm going to pick that up so you can see the 29 splines in the center, but the clutch discs are different. I have both a 10 spline disc, which you can see here, as well as a 15 spline disc shown here. It's important for you to identify what disc is in your tractor so that you can get the same spline back when you order it, and also you get the correct lineup tool, either a 10 spline or a 15 spline lineup tool for your disc, and then the 29 splines here are for the pressure plate. Notice that to my left here, there's a third choice with the same pressure plate. This is called either like a 3-pad disc, a button disc. I've heard it called a couple different terms, but it's this triangular disc, which is still for the same pressure plate, but instead it just has a different style, and you'll see that there are 10 splines in the center of this one, so it needs a 10 spline, 29 spline paired lineup tool for it. In front of me are all the pieces that would be included in a clutch kit, which means it's the pressure plate, the lineup tool, the throwout bearing, pilot bearing, and the clutch disc. Those 5 pieces come in a clutch kit. It's important to notice though that to my left here I have some 13-inch clutches, and these 13-inch clutch kits do not include a lineup tool, so you'll need to purchase the lineup tool separately if you're going with a 13-inch clutch disc. Here I'll show you a tape measure. This is how you measure the 13. The ones that I had before were 11-inch clutches. So 13-inch clutch is like this, and this is available in two ways. You can see that this is a dampered clutch disc. You can see that there's the springs in the center. You might also hear it called a spring drive clutch disc. Or in front here, we have a different kind of clutch disc, which would be considered a rigid clutch disc. Notice how it's different than the spring drive or dampered clutch disc. In my opinion, this dampered clutch disc is a better choice, especially if you have a loader tractor. We have a Ford 5000 with a loader that we put this clutch into, and we chose the spring drive because it just gets a lot of use with a loader, and that's a better choice. It is a little bit more money, but in my opinion, it's worth the price. If you just can't afford that, then you could go with a rigid clutch, and it's still a good clutch choice for you. It's just not quite as good. Next up here, I have two more clutch kits. There's actually a third that I don't have shown here. I ran out of room on the table, but these two and the third are for an independent PTO setup. Again, you can see here that we have the 11-inch clutch style. I'll measure that and show you. 11-inch, the same for 11-inch on the 3-pad style. And you can, again, same thing, pay attention to 15 spline or 10 splines in the center. And it's also important to notice that there are 4 fingers on this pressure plate. This replaces the 3-finger pressure plate style. So if you pull your clutch out and you see just 3 fingers, that's okay. You can update it to this 4-finger clutch style. I hope that these differences all here make it really easy for you to know what the difference is between the different clutch kits. On our website, we have them clearly noted. Just make sure that you pay attention to the splines, the size, and also what kind of pressure plate you want. If you don't want to purchase a complete clutch kit, we do offer the discs, the pressure plates, release bearings, throwout bearings, and lineup tools as their own individual items too, if you don't want to go the whole entire kit route. The next step is to remove this pilot bearing right here. The reason why you want to remove it and replace it is because it is the same age as the clutch. It's likely worn. You've gone this far, might as well take it out. It's pretty simple. It's an affordable part. It's in your clutch kit. Do you need any more reasons? It should be enough. I can feel mine has a little bit of a catch on it, so I'm going to just pull it out with this bearing puller once I get it tight on there, and it should come out pretty simply for us. There we go. Okay, so there's my old bearing. Look at the back of it there. It looks pretty bad. Looks really bad. Okay, here's my brand new bearing right here, just like this. I'm gonna set it on there. It's important that I get this started straight. I have a driver like this one, and this is going to line up in the center of the bearing. And then I'm just gonna tap it in there, and I'm gonna drive it all the way just until it's flush. I'm not gonna drive it past flush at all. It's just gonna rest right in there, just like that.
Okay, Rachel got the pilot bearing in, and I'm gonna work on the release bearing, or it's also called the throwout bearing. Inside here, I took the linkage off because we're gonna adjust the clutch anyhow. So I took the linkage off the side, and as you can see, I can just pull the fingers, and the fingers will release the whole carrier right out of the tractor. So it comes out, the fingers are in here, and as you release the clutch lever, it'll just come right off. Now the bearing is actually just the end. So I have a new bearing right here. We've got to reuse the carrier, and we're just going to reinstall a new bearing. On the old throwout bearing, I don't know if you can hear that. This one here is terrible. It makes a lot of noise, and that's the chatter noise or the loud noise you hear when the tractor's running. This bearing is actually quite bad, and we're going to replace it. So we're going to go over the press and press it off. The throwout bearing has just got to be pressed off the collar. It doesn't come off that hard. If you don't have a press, you can use 2 blocks of wood, put a socket in there, and just pound it out with a socket and a hammer. This is kind of thin casting, so I don't like to use a hammer if you don't have to, so we're just going to simply press it out. And you can see it comes out real easy. The socket fits right inside there, and it just pushes it right out. I got to catch it on the bottom side here. And there it is. Pushes the bearing right off. And that's it. It just slides over the collar like that. Reverse now. We're just going to put the new bearing back on. The bearing's got one side. The smooth side goes up. The side where you can see the bearing goes down. So you just put it back on, and we're just going to repeat the same process. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to press the bearing back onto the collar. And there we are, a new bearing. And you can see this one here does not rattle like the other one did. Ready to go back in.
Okay, I just put on my last bolt for the flywheel. Notice how mine is resurfaced both here and there, and also this little tin piece here needs to be reinstalled over top of that bearing, so don't forget it when you put your bolts back on. Whenever I get a new clutch kit in, I always do a double check verification to make sure I chose the correct clutch kit by lining it up and making sure that it goes on the splines. I do the same thing with the pilot bearing too, just to make sure it's all good and that I made the right choice. When I'm ready to put the clutch disc in, this hub always comes out. That is true on both this button clutch as well as a full face clutch. The hub always is going to come towards the outside. And with that, now we're ready to put the pressure plate on. So my dad's gonna lift it up here, and I'm gonna get my hand out of there at the right time. He's gonna turn it around this way. I like to use a Phillips screwdriver to push it through there, and that helps me know that I'm on the hole where I need to be. Then I take my lineup tool and see how the center moves around. You'll see it once I get in there. It moves up and down, so that's why the lineup tool is so important. And it's two-stage, so you got to get through both the pilot bearing, the clutch disc, and the pressure plate. You got to get all the way through, lined up, and find, there we go, I found something.
Got it. Good job.
You think that's all the way?
You got it. Yep,
okay.
It's bottomed out.
Very good. So with that, now you take the bolts and attach the pressure plate onto the flywheel.
And these bolts can easily be twisted off. So we're using a different impact than we were using earlier. That's a real light duty one. And we're not gonna run them all the way in. We're just gonna run each of them in to get it going. And then as we get it going, you'll see these plastic little spacers. These fingers will crunch down, and we gotta remove these 3 spacers as we go.
You do not want to put your tractor together with those spacers still inside there.
No.
Remember that there is a little bit of a little lock washer behind these bolts here too.
Let me get one started here. Got it. All right, we've got all of our discs tightened down, and now we got to get that out of here, and they really stick in there. So I just use a pair of pliers to grab onto it. You get it loose, and then it comes right out. Rachel's taking the little spacers off to make sure that we're all set. Now we've got it fastened down.
I moved
Gotta
it.
go a little more.
You can see better than I can on that side. There we go.
So we've got all of our spacers out. It's all on. It's lined up straight. Now we're going to put the throwout bearing in. We're getting ready to put the throwout bearing in. And this throwout bearing is the same if you have a single stage or a 2-stage. All the throwout bearings are the same. So I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the inside of this because this does not have a grease zerk in here. I've got to get way back here and get it on the throat of that too. So I'm greasing that. I'm going to put a little bit on the threads to help get this clutch plate to slide, and a little bit right here where we're trying to slide the clutch onto this, and a little bit on my pilot bearing. So those are the areas that we have to get everything to slide. So I'm just trying to lube them up a little bit with some anti-seize. Okay, now that I got that, I got to work with the lever over here on the side to get those fingers. You can see I got to get this right here lined up. So I'm trying to get it to go together. There we go. I haven't got the one on the other side here. Okay, it is directional, so I'll try it this way. Seemed to come out really easy, of course. There we go. All right, so I got it so that the throwout bearing slides back and forth on that shaft just like that. That's how it works. So I'm going to leave it in the back position, and we are ready to install this.
When you push the 2 halves of the tractor together, you need to work very carefully. You don't want to damage anything either on the rear end of the tractor or within your new clutch system. So just be very gentle and work carefully. My dad and I worked strategically together to push the 2 halves together. Once we got close, it was important to move and rotate the flywheel until we knew that we were onto the shaft that is in the rear end of the tractor. You can accomplish that by raising and lowering your cherry picker just a little bit, making minor adjustments as you come together to make sure that you're straight and in alignment. Once you're close, maybe like a 3 to 4 inch gap, you could use a long bolt like we did to just be a guide. We're using it like a dowel. We're not using those bolts to pull the 2 halves of the tractor together. We're just using those bolts to make sure that we are completely lined up and in alignment. Then, once we were even closer, maybe like a 1 or 2 inch gap, we started to use the original bolts and tighten them in. My dad and I worked together. We tightened those bolts at the same rate. You don't want to like tighten up one side of the tractor and then go back and do the other side of the tractor. You want to push it all together onto the rear end of the tractor at a very even pace. And then once you have those started, it'll just glide right together smoothly. You can use a pry bar to rotate the flywheel as you go an entire rotation to make sure that you are fully seated together. This whole process should be done while the tractor is in neutral, and make sure that your rear wheels are not going to move around on you. You want to make sure that those are sturdy as you're pushing the two halves together. Once you have your tractor two halves back together, you'll need to do a clutch adjustment. That is accomplished right here in this linkage. So you can pull this pin out, and then there will be a nut on the back of there. I just don't have my nut, okay? Pull your pin out, and then you can turn this either forward or back to increase or decrease the amount of play that you have in your clutch pedal. I'm gonna put mine back here, and I'll show you how that is measured. So with that secured, then I can come up here to my clutch pedal and take a tape measure. The book suggests 1.25 inches for this model. So I'm right here and I'm pushing it down until there is clutch resistance. That's where you stop and test that play. And you can see that I'm at 1.25 inches right on the money. If I was off, you can be pretty far off. So if you're off, then you come back here and turn this. Once your clutch is in adjustment and you're happy with the amount of play that you have on your pedal, you tighten up this jam nut here, which is a 9/16 wrench. Tighten that up so that it holds it into place and that it is accurately adjusted. Sometimes when you have a clutch problem on your tractor, simply all it needs is a clutch adjustment. So if you're not certain that you need to completely replace your clutch, make sure that it's an adjustment first. Try using it in adjustment and see if that will buy you some time on your clutch. You might not have to immediately replace it if you try this adjustment first. If you do discover that your clutch is properly adjusted and it's still not working, then you definitely need to do a replacement. That's something you could try first. Also do it at the end. Then you can go back to your pedal and you can see that I have 1 stage and 2 stage there on my clutch. I can feel that in between stage. I did not have that middle stage before I started on this project. Once you have this completed, you test your adjustment here on the tractor, and then once you have the tractor started up and running, do a double check and make sure that the PTO operates as it should with that 2-stage clutch. Whether you have the live or independent PTO, make sure that that's working as it should. In my hand is a compression ring washer set. You need to purchase this set because when you take your hydraulic pump off of the tractor, this set is kind of a one-time use. You don't want to try to reuse this on your hydraulic system. If you do, you could have leaks or you could have hydraulics that don't work at all. I'd hate for you to go to all this work to put a clutch in your tractor and then when you go to use it, your hydraulics don't work. So you can prevent that by purchasing this compression set, as well as an O-ring for your suction line, and then also a gasket here for the face of your hydraulic pump. If your tractor is a diesel, remember that you are going to have air through the fuel system, so you need to correct that. I go through those steps on a separate video that is about replacing the injectors on your tractor. So if you have a diesel, go ahead and watch that video. It'll help you know how you can prime your fuel system so that your diesel system is ready to work. If you have a gas tractor like mine, you don't need to follow any of those steps. I hope that this tutorial is helpful to you and it gives you all the confidence you need to replace the clutch on your tractor. Remember, when you're ready to order a clutch, you need to split your tractor in half and pay attention to the following things: how many splines and what shape your clutch disc is, what type of pressure plate you have and how many splines are on the pressure plate. Measure the clutch, whether you have an 11-inch or 13-inch clutch, and then you'll be ready to order the correct clutch kit. Keep in mind that if you have just a regular 4-speed model, then you will probably find a 10-inch clutch inside, just a single stage clutch. We do offer those clutches and we have a separate tutorial which applies to those clutches a little more specifically. When you are ready to purchase those parts, please do so on my website, which is farmtractorrepair.com. I realize that you can buy clutch kits a number of places, but I ask that you give the business to my site as a thank you for doing this video. It just encourages us to do more and helps to fund this tractor tutorial. If you can, subscribe to our channel. That will give you a notification every time that a new video is released.